Hi, I'm John Kohler. It's one thing to hear about this great property from me, but it's another to hear directly from the landowner herself. You're going to really enjoy this segment with Jenny Swift at Notch Plantation.
Notch is a lot of things. It's a quail hunting place that my father put together over the course of about 20 years. And Notch is also, or was, a very small town that Andrew Jackson is supposed to have ridden through on his way to the Battle of New Orleans. And the way he marked the trail was with 3 notches on a tree, so ergo the name Notch. Well, it's a sanctuary, in the best sense of the word. Plus, it's a lot of fun. I don't want to brag, but I will. My father, when he put the place together, his interest was wild birds. And a guy named Mr. Rosine, who was a very famous and well-educated naturalist, I guess, he came down and looked at the place for my father and actually wrote a book that is very well read. And he told my father how to manage the place. And my father's, in response to what Mr. Rosine asked Daddy, Mr. Rosine said, well, Mr. Swift, what do you want to do with the place? And Daddy said, I want the most wild birds per acre that I can get for the least amount of money. And we still copy that formula that Mr. Rosine came up with, Lord knows, I don't know when it was, must have been the 50s or early 60s. So we have decidedly more wild quail than anybody I know in Alabama. I have not been to the Harvard's place, which is meant to be spectacular, but we have more wild quail than any other quail hunting place, I think primarily because we didn't do what most of our neighbors did. We didn't cut the hardwoods. We didn't worry about whether we had a hardwood stand here and softwood there. We weren't trying to make a pretty picture. We were trying to generate as much wildlife as we could, particularly quail. And when I was a child, there were no deer here. There were no coyotes. We didn't have a problem with wild hogs. And we didn't have alligators either. So, you know, nature's changed. Well, this is one of the hardest things I've ever done, is the decision to sell 3 Notch. But I can tell you why I would choose 3 Notch. None of my relatives who have hunting places in this area, and none of my father's friends even have wild quail anymore. Daddy thought you could have a bird an acre, and that's what Mr. Rosine said. Now, in Albany or the Red Hills, you're going to have higher populations than that. But let me tell you, after you get up and down off a horse 20 or 30 times in one day, you're perfectly happy just having a bird an acre. So that's where I'm coming from. It's also hilly, which is an anomaly. We are over 500 feet above sea level in Alabama. So how the topography got to be what it is remains a mystery. It can't be explained away with poor farming practices during this, prior to the Civil War. No one really knows why this country or this particular place is hilly in the way that it is. It's unique almost to any place because there are 27 different soil types on this nearly 7,000 acres. Usually, well, I don't know, but I don't think one would find 10 different soil types on a place this size. We have some sand, we have some clay, we have some, we don't have any of the black belt goo, but we do have some fertile soil. Well, I'm a great believer in it. Both my husband, Joe, and I are certified prescribed burners. You know, we went to the school and we renew our certificate every 5 years. We actually learned a lot, and I'm convinced that if the rest of the country adhered to this policy, that you wouldn't have these 2 million acre wildfires that you have out west. Now, I'm no scientist, but I did live in Colorado for 13 years, and they were nuts. You know, they had so much dead timber on, what do they call it, fuel, on the ground in these national parks, that it was just obvious that disaster was on the horizon. That's my opinion of prescribed burning. And the Indians always burned every year who lived here, the Creek Indians. We've had relatively no herbicides or pesticides on the place for 50 years, except for the ones that the government requires as part of their Longleaf Alliance program, which we benefited from and really think is great. If you love, I love wild things, I love wild places, and I love wild creatures. We have the gopher tortoise everywhere, everywhere, and I think our government grant for that, which was over $100,000, and all we had to do was the prescribed burning we do anyway. So there's another argument. We're inundated with very rare grasses and wildflowers that are threatened in other places. He wanted a legal duck pond situation. So he built 2 lakes. One's higher than the other. And one of the lakes always had water in it. The other one, you drain and plant corn in and then flood with a culvert. The culvert needs repairing, and that's not such a big deal. I haven't done it because I'm more of a nature lover than a shooter. And my father had a terrific duck pond in Georgia next to Lake Eufaula, which is quite spectacular if you come upon it and you never knew it was there. I don't know exactly how big it is, but it's big. Right off the top of my head, I can think of 4 or 5 lakes. None of them are that large, but because they're lakes, it would be legal. Say you wanted a 60-acre lake. I doubt you'd even have to get a permit to simply break the dam between the 2 duck ponds and put the dam, I'm trying to get my directions, east at the end of that. You would just be repairing what was there, and you'd get a 60-acre lake if you wanted one. Streams, we border the Pea River, which supposedly is never dry. I've never seen it dry. And on the western boundary, there's something called Indian Creek that's never dry. But the other streams that we have, we actually call them ditches, because it's possible for them to dry up in August, and after a big rain in the winter, it's 100, you have to go 100 feet to cross them. And so we have 2 main ditches like that run basically north-south and then curve around to the west. And we have 2 fairly large beaver ponds that, depending on how much water you wanted, would be available to enlarge. We had an association of southeastern Alabama quail plantations, which Cam Lanier was responsible for starting and chairing. And he brought together most of the owners in the area. And the plantation sizes ranged from maybe 3,500 acres to Cam owned maybe 35,000 acres. But we had a competition once a year. All the owners got together, who has the best dog, and We had a dinner and a fundraiser for the Albany Quail Management, and tall timbers. It really was a wonderful time for all of us. And the hope is that we can bring that back. We have some new owners. The Harbert family is very distinguished, and they bought a great deal of the old Sedgefield place, which belonged to the Maytags. And the Wilson family is really enthusiastic about reorganizing this association. But it really was wonderful, and I think that will happen again. What they had on Sedgefield and continue to have is the national level professional field trial events. And that sport's been around Lord knows how many years, and Union Springs is actually the field trial capital of America. And we do think that we have some of the best hunting dogs around. And that's because we had the great good fortune of a relationship with Bob Whaley, who would give us puppies and, breed with our dogs. We bred with his, and, worked. One comes here for the respite from the rest of the world, really. We have dinner with neighbors. We have the Union Springs Country Club, which serves meals 2 or 3 days a week. But for the most part, we eat at home or at a neighbor's house. And there are some awfully good cooks in the area if you're lucky enough to find one. Transportation, we're extremely lucky in that regard. Eufaula, Alabama has a lovely landing strip that will handle, it's long enough for a substantial jet. I don't know exactly, I don't know if you could land a G4 there or not, but probably. And they have a terminal, they have gas, and they have security, which is the most important in any rural area. Cam Lanier also has a lease on a jet runway. I don't know how long that lease lasts. He was very generous to us. Union Springs actually has, Union Springs, which is the closest town, it's about 15 miles from here, and they actually have a strip that can handle a small private jet. They don't, at this time, have refueling capacity, but I think that's in the works. For smaller aircraft, there's Clayton, Alabama, which is the airport that my husband and I use. It's right in front of the police station, and we used to fly in and out on the equivalent of a Beechcraft Bonanza. But I think you could land a Queen Air there, I'm not sure. And Tuskegee has jet facility as well. If you're a naturalist, there's the Whaley Center. There was a wonderful philanthropist who lived here. I think originally he was from upstate New York, and he left his place to the state of Alabama. And it has the largest covered bridge in Alabama. It has an incredible assortment of wildlife, and he reconstructed at least 5 or 6 log cabins on the property. And they have visitation hours, but they keep it, the state of Alabama does a great job of not overcrowding it and hurting the wildlife. It's wonderful. Fort Benning in Columbus, I've had visitors who just wanted to go to Columbus to the Infantry Museum. That's only about an hour away. And Montgomery is the capital of Alabama, and it's quite beautiful. Good restaurants in Montgomery. We just live a quiet life when we're here with our guests and our friends. It's everything I ever wanted a house to be. It's technology-wise, extremely modern and sophisticated. You've been inside it. And have you seen a support beam anywhere? No. It's buttressed, very much like Notre Dame. And the kitchen and the porch support that 28-foot ceiling in the main room. But ostensibly, the house on the outside and the inside looks like an old southern house, you know, with place, you know, for the dogs to sleep under the porch, and you could put the washing machine out here if you wanted to, and every square inch of the house is used. The hallways aren't empty hallways. One hallway is a bar, the other hallway is an office. The ceilings, the lowest ceiling height is 11 feet. The architect was Taylor Dawson, who's originally from Montgomery. And if you look from the bedroom on the north end to the window in the mudroom on the south end, there's a straight line. You see window to the outdoors. And that, I've forgotten, there's about a 4-syllable name for that principle of architecture. And another thing I like about the house is that it's actually all cedar. No sheetrock, no, you know. I love the house. I feel like I'm bragging, but I've had good luck with choosing people to help me that were much better at their job than I would ever be. And my father said that was what, he said that good management is about surrounding yourself with people who are far more capable than you. So, I got you.
You know, one of the unique things about our firm is we cover all the plantation belts. And we are able to compare prices, location, amenities to each other. And what's so neat about 3-Notch is it looks exactly like it could be in Thomasville, the Red Hills right now. Red soils, roll, terrain, everything. Yet it's half the price. In the wild quail world, there's different management techniques. Walter Rosine, Herbert Stoddard. This property is managed by Walter Rosine. In fact, it's managed the way he said it should be managed for the last 60 years. And that's a lot to be said. The wild bird numbers here are extraordinary, particularly for Alabama. And the testament to this family and what they've done here, and the legacy, and really what the next land steward can do to come in and update and modernize just a few little things on the wildlife management will make this one of the most outstanding wild bird properties in the Southeast. To find out more about this great property, please give me a call.